guys want to move on to Buy, Rent, Burn, our segment?
Yes.
Yeah.
So buy, rent, burn. Each of us pick a game, and then we decide of the three games we've all gone back, revisited, and played, which game you would buy, which game you would rent, if you could still do that, and which game you would burn. So let's go through the list real quick. I picked Dig Dug 2 for the NES. Andy?
I pick Shadow Blasters for Sega Genesis.
I picked Excitebike from the NES.
Okay. Great picks. We've all had a chance to play those within the last week, I assume. Everybody's gotten through them.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Justin, you want to kick it off? Go through your pick, why you picked it, and then I guess what you thought of ours.
On this, I guess the game that I would buy would have to be the one I picked, Excitebike. I'm just going back, playing through it again. It's so much fun. You can just pick it up and play it. You don't have much time, play it for a little bit. Otherwise, go through the entire thing and create a track or whatnot. The game I'd rent, I actually had this game confused with a different one, but would be Dig Dug 2. Just the game behind it, I guess. Being able to build the different courses and try to trap them. It's kind of fun. The game I would burn, and I probably will never ever play again, is Shadow Blasters. I'm not a huge fan of the shooting, side-scrolling type game like that. And that game was actually really frustrating with some of the mobs that would attack you from behind and would float in at stupid angles and sewers. That game was just frustrating. I would burn that.
Yeah, you had there were definitely points in that game where you had no choice but to take damage.
Yep.
Which is not super fun.
And if you could angle shot instead of just straight up and down, but again, I emulated it, so I was using an Xbox controller, or a 360 controller, so the D-pad is garbage. But I couldn't imagine the D-pad would be any better.
Yeah. How about you, Ryan? What?
Yeah, so I guess my pick, Dig Dug 2. Kind of an underrated game, I think. It's still like a $5 game on the NES. I had a neighbor who owned it. I loved playing it. I kind of liked the fact that they changed up the gameplay a little bit, so you had some strategy to getting more points and destroying the island. Or you can just shoot guys like you did in the original game, but it's a lot less points. Kind of in playing with that, I was talking with Justin too, and I pointed out, and I don't think he knows, and I don't know if you did either, Andy, when you were playing it, but when you die from the start menu, if you hold up and then start, it'll actually reset you back from the last level you completed or got to, so you don't have to restart. You can go back to level 20 or whatever it was. So I had some fun playing that. Listing them though, I guess I'd have to go with Justin on buy for Excitebike. I did a list on my YouTube channel a couple years back of my top 10 NES games, and Excitebike is up there for me. It was in the list. It's just such a great game to pick up and play. That theme song, super catchy. The track editor as a kid, you'd build the track with that stupid single jump that was giant, with the bridge. You just do 800 of those in a row every time. But I don't know, just so many good memories there. And going back and playing it again now, you pop it in 30 minutes, you're done with it, but it's still fun. You always want to come back to it. So buy for me, easily. Rent, I would rent Dig Dug 2. I think it's a lot of fun, but I don't think it trumps Excitebike for me. And burn with a vengeance, I would go with Shadow Blasters. I did not care for that game. I got super frustrated, like Justin mentioned, with just the character or the enemy patterns were ridiculous. It's one of those games where stuff spawns in behind you and endlessly runs at you. 50% of the crap you step on falls away, so if you're not constantly jumping and avoiding. I don't know. I will say it was a very Genesis game. When I think Genesis, especially the first couple years of the Genesis, it very much felt like an arcade type game. Action platformer. And the art style was good. It was interesting that you had 4 characters and they there was permadeath. So once you ran through those 4 characters with different attack patterns and stuff, they were gone. But I did not enjoy the frustration that that game caused me. My apologies, Andy. How about you? What was your list?
No, I mean, I'm bringing interesting games, not necessarily good games, right?
Interesting or shitty, but yes, you brought it up.
Okay, so here's my case on Shadow Blasters.
Okay.
Controls suck, for sure. The speed of it sucks. The enemy patterns suck. But the actual systems that they have in that game are pretty crazy. So I don't know if you guys figured out, like, the little pickups that you get, the white ones, the red ones, the blue ones, and all that.
Sure.
So the white ones, if you pick up the white ones, they add to your power meter. And your power meter, if you hold down the A button, you charge up your power meter, and then it does a huge blast.
Yeah, I did notice that.
Yeah.
So the more white ones that you get, the less time you have to charge it up. And eventually, if you fill that whole bar up, it's just the huge blast, like every time you press A.
Huh.
And then the blue ones and the red ones, they increase your jump speed or your jump range, and then the other one is your speed. So it's kind of like some pseudo RPG mechanics in this kind of like, I guess I wouldn't call it run and gun. It's a platformer, but it's not on the level of what a Mega Man is or a Contra or anything like that. But it definitely has some cool mechanics like that. And like you said, the 4 different characters with permadeath, you can switch out as you go. So like if one guy's full in his power, you can just switch out and immediately turns into the other guy.
In game?
And you can boost up the other guy's power right there too.
Huh, I missed that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stuff going on in the back end of that where it's just, but yeah, the gameplay itself is not great. I don't know if did you guys play the future level?
I played the top 3, and at that point I lost it.
I played the 2.
Yeah, the future level is Metroid. I feel like they just took assets straight from Metroid.
Nice.
You get to the end, it's a brain in pretty much a jar that you're shooting.
I've never seen that in a game before.
Yeah, it's
Interesting. I might have to go back and check that out if I can force myself to do it.
For me, the list probably goes, I'm going to say Dig Dog 2 for my buy. I really like that game, actually. I haven't put a lot of time into it in the past, so this was like the first time that I really put some time into it.
That's good, because I threw that on the list knowing that you despised it, so I'm glad that I changed your mind on that.
Yep. I mean, the frustrating part is, like, I wasn't always clear on which side of the island that was going to fall away. So what you do is you kind of create different faults in this island that break away, and hopefully you get some enemies that fall into the ocean.
And it's always like the smaller brick, or it's the smaller chunk of land that'll always fall from the landmass.
Sure. And that's probably like one of those things that I'm not keeping track of immediately.
Yeah.
They do give you a second to jump to either side, I guess, so it's not a huge deal. Yeah, and I do like when you die, you come back and it's the same thing. So it's like you leave off exactly where you were.
Right.
Yep, exactly. And it's almost more like a puzzle game, because once you figure out what you need to do in each level, you just go do it. You can definitely get pretty far by doing that. There's not a whole lot of randomness if you can pull off exactly what you need to do right away. I'm sure farther down, deeper the levels you get, I'm sure there's a lot more like enemy management that you have to do, kind of run around. A lot more randomness in it at that point. But from what I could tell, it's pretty predictable once you figure it out.
Yeah.
My rent would probably be Excitebike. That's only because in 2017, it doesn't take up too much of my time, I would say. For how fast you can go through the courses, it gets pretty quick, and you got the gist of it. Definitely toward the end, there's a lot more mastering of the hills. So there's a lot of time that you could put into mastering that, but I just didn't have the patience for it now.
Well, and the enemy AI in those last couple of levels is just incredibly cheap. I feel like, too, which,
Yep.
I mean, it would take some patience to get through that.
And can one of you explain to me, so you have that bridge looking thing,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes there's not something on the other end that's holding it up?
Mm-hmm.
What is the physics of that bridge?
Minecraft.
Yeah, there you go.
We solved it all these years.
Everything's built in Minecraft.
Yeah. Yeah, that is the one structure that I've, after all these years, still not figured out how to, like, ride. I don't get how to best progress over that thing.
Yep. Plus, when you're riding the heat, the temperature, even in a safe zone where it's like really beeping at you, that gets annoying after a while too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
And then obviously for my burn is Shadow Blasters, the one game that I brought. Really cool mechanics in it, but they obviously didn't pull it off. I mean, it's made by a company called Sage's Creation. So I'm not even sure where that comes from. I don't know how many games. I know they make
Never
a
heard
couple
of
other
them.
games on it, but it's only strictly on the Genesis, I believe they've been. So
Well, at least it's unanimous. Shadow Blasters is the flaming turd of this week's Buy, Rent, Burn.
yep.
I do take it back. I am going to go back and try it now that I know the power-ups.
Yeah. Now that you've explained it and the Metroid thing, I think I'm going to go back and try it. I'm still going to firmly keep it where it is on this list for me, but
The best way to do it, like I finished it today with using some cheats because the enemies are really cheap, for sure, and it gets worse as you go. So if you want to see some of the stuff in the game, you might need to turn some save states on.
interesting. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. So yeah, I mean, I think Byron Burn, we're going to continue. This will be an ongoing segment of the podcast past episode 1. Obviously, the podcast, I think we can all agree we're looking to get engagement from the community. So this might be something where if people have suggestions for games to throw into the Byron Burn segment, definitely send them to us. We have an email, weekendrentalpodcast@gmail.com. We are going to be looking to hopefully add like the mailbag section, get questions, topics, discussions from everyone. So if you have an email, weekendrentalpodcast@gmail.com. And then as far as social media,
Yeah, it's Weekend Rental PC. I suppose you should be able to search it Weekend Rental Podcast, and it should bring it up by the name too, I suppose, through Twitter. And then Facebook, it should be the Weekend Rental Podcast. It'll be a group or a page that you can like, I guess.
yes. So we're there. We're on all the medias.
And you can find us at weekendpodcast.com and also submit your list of what you would pick for your buy, rent, burn of these 3 games that we just picked.
I like it. Yes, I would be curious to see some feedback on that. All right. I think that is an episode. Would you all agree? Episode 1 in the books. We did it. Yes. Well, thank you everyone for listening. And remember, be kind, rewind.